Welcome, everyone. We are Clean Slate Show Runners. It's a podcast where the slate is clean, and I am keen to have conversation with some of the most amazing people. Welcome to the Clean Slate Show.
Thank you so much.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Take one.
Maybe set on him. And then,
To me, you have to go a little bit, keep your hands to yourself.
so, all right, we can start, right?
I have told my girls, even till this day, when they walk out of the house, be safe, I love you. And my girls will say it back, I love you too, Mom. And it's such a moment of surrealism for me that I'm like, my kids tell me that they love me because I never had that growing up. That was something I made sure I put into my parenting advice.
Telling them why they should stay calm with their kids.
Stay calm in those moments where you think you're losing it most, because that's when your child needs you the most. And then when they're done, try to, I saw you were upset, acknowledge that they were upset and that it's okay, but now you need to know why. Tell them why. And as you get older with your older children, and this is coming from a parent speaking, be honest with your child again and explain to them the why.
Trust your child. Don't try to impose your vision for them that you have decided. They have born with their own destiny. So
Yes.
no matter how hard we fight it, they're gonna meet their destiny. Success will not, teach you more as much as failure will teach you.
100%.
And the confidence that you get after you fail and you do it again, you get empowered.
Oh yeah. They were allowed to cry when they were little, but I had to always encourage them. Why are you crying? I'm not saying you can't. Go ahead and cry. When you're done, let's come and talk.
We let him cry. We give him space, and we do tell him once you are done, because he has so much emotions in his himself that
Oh yeah.
if I tell him anything, he's not going to probably be able to comprehend what I'm trying to tell him. So let the emotions flow, cry, and I don't want to stop you crying. I want you to cry because it's going to help you drain out and just feel lighter. It's like a medicine. Like try this next time. Let them cry it out. They will cry for 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, sometimes 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Because they're trying to test you, or they're trying to test the situation. If you don't let them test it, they'll keep on doing it over and over again, and then the moment you start carrying them up or doing something, they will feel that that's the only way for them to get whatever they want.
100%.
So, Miss Kerry, welcome to the show. Welcome to we are Clean Slate Show Runners, which means we have a clean slate. I have no assumption, no presumption about you up till this moment. So, you and me are going to fill this empty slate, with our conversation.
Excellent.
During the process, I'll tell you exactly why you are here.
Okay.
Because the first thing when I spoke to you about, you were curious as to why me, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what everyone says whenever I approach someone. Maybe this is because it's the beginning. So there is something that you don't see that I see about you, and the reason why I said was the concept of aura and vibes, right?
Yes.
So every time I met you, so we spoke at length the very first time in your office, if you remember, when me and Shivani were there, and so confused. Zane was just barely born, and we were wondering if daycare, not daycare, what happens with daycare. I had anxieties to let him go away from me. Shivani had major anxieties, right? We spoke at length. I would have told you my name briefly, but I didn't keep saying my name enough times. What got me really intrigued also was months later I came to pick up Zane, and you were in your office from the aquarium,
Yes,
and you yelled hi Halak, right?
I did.
And I was like, how is she doing that? And every time I was around you, it was just happiness, smile. I think kids felt calmer. He was definitely not calmer around me as he was around you, and you met him for the first time.
Yeah.
That got me really fascinated. You're such a happy energy.
Thanks.
How do you do? Is it just because you have grown up to doing it, or you're always like this?
I'm not quite sure. I've been told that before. I sometimes see it when someone points it out to me, like you just did. Other times I don't know. Personally speaking, I think I'm a very optimistic person. I think you have to find the good in everybody. You have to find the good in every situation because there's so much bad in the world. I am one of 7. I'm the middle of 7 children. So I've always been, I don't know, I don't know, I just find happiness if I need to be happy, right? There's days where I'm like every other human being, I just am, I have my moments. I'm a woman, I have my moments. But generally speaking, I just think it's my job in the world to be as kind as I can, to be happy. I just think if you exude happiness, then people exude happiness.
I'm kind of you. I like to stay happy. At least when I put up my happy face when I am. We all have our human side
Yes.
where we introspect when we are alone, or when we are in our house. But
Mhm.
when we are in front of people, there are certain personalities that they're always come across as smiling or happy or just full of energy, right? So this is one of the reasons why I relate to you, because I am like that. I want to assume, are you hyper?
I'm not hyper. I will tell you my job. My kids will tell you. My husband will tell you. This is not the Miss Kerry they get at home. That I think my job really has built that into me. That I had to learn that in the very early stages of my life to my position. Kids do need to see a happy face. Parents do need to see a happy face. And there's times where I have to put on a happy face, even though maybe in my personal life, 5 minutes before I walked in the door, something went haywire. My dogs threw up, or my children when they were little threw up. I'm like, okay, but I think I've had to learn in the beginning stages to bring it out. I always tell people in my house, I'm an introvert. I'm not loud, Miss Kerry. I just go about my business. I'm quiet. I could sit in a very dark room and read for hours. I like to nap, but in the world, I'm typically this happy, smiling, because I just see people just need to see that. I just think it's like pay it forward, right? If you do it, then you'll do it, and then maybe the next person you smile at will do it. So I don't know. I think that's
Such a
me.
good way of looking at life. So let's start from very beginning.
Sure.
I want to understand you a bit more before we start jumping into talking more real life world, right? Talk to me how were your parents with you when you were young, you were growing up? What did you guys, because you said you were 7 siblings,
Mm-hmm.
including yourself.
Yes.
That would have been I have 2, and with one I was struggling. I have 2, I am kind of finding my cadence, and because I have 2 boys and I really wanted also a girl. A lot of my friends and they say, go for a third one, and I'm like, let's hold on. I'm in love with these 2. Maybe I'm understanding and learning that it's not about what you want, it's about what your future needs, that God gives you with that
Yes.
perspective. That's what my mom tells me. So talk to me about your childhood growing up. How was your times?
Oh, I think my childhood is exactly why I am the person I am today. It was a very tough childhood. I didn't know it at the time. I grew up with a single mom for a very long time. My biological dad was an alcoholic. My mom left him when I was 2. We lived in New York. We came to New Jersey. My mom was pregnant when she left my biological dad. So it was me, and then my twin brothers came along. So initially there were 6 of us. I have 2 older sisters and an older brother. Then there's me, and then I have 2 younger brothers, and now a younger sister. So for about 8 years, my mom raised us on our own. We were poor, very, very poor. There is 10 years between my eldest sister at the time, my eldest sister and my youngest brother. So I was then just the 3rd child. So it's almost like 2 families, right? They were so much older than me that I was the youngest, but I'm the youngest. I'm the youngest of my younger siblings. So I'm the oldest. So I have a dynamic where as I got older and learned psychology and where your birth order plays. So I think definitely my childhood, my upbringing, definitely made me the person I am today, because it was so tough. And my mom was single. She made me very strong, independent. I raised my daughters strong, independent. But my older siblings made decisions that I was like, ooh, I don't ever want to do that. I don't want to make those decisions. So I learned, I watched, I'm an observer. I watch everything. I listen. As much as I talk, I listen. I see everything. So my mom met somebody when I was 8, probably about 8, maybe 7. I didn't know it at the time. I didn't know that, right? He would end up becoming my stepdad. I can remember distinctly at the age of 10, no, maybe 8. Sorry, maybe 8. He adopted us. My 2 older sisters were over the age of 18, so that wasn't necessarily a given that they needed to be adopted because they were over 18. My brother was at 18, so it was a request. Will you, do you want me? My brother agreed. I distinctly remember my younger brothers and I walked into the judge's chambers and were like, do you know what's happening? What's going on? And I was like, this is not what I want. Because I was very close to my mom. My mom and I were we were 2 peas in a pod. I took care of my mom. I watched my mom. I was the second matriarch in, that part of my household. So I was like, nope. I just want it to be me and my mom forever. My mom had to take me out and be like, you kind of need to do this for me. And I was like, I walked back and I was like, fine. Yep, if my mom wants it, this is good.
Yeah, it's about whatever mom wants, right?
That's really what it was. That's
right.
really what it was. And then fast forward, I was the first person to go to college in my family. My youngest sister, she is my half sister. She came along. So there's now 20 years. So there's 20. I make the 10-year mark, and then my youngest sister.
Wow.
So there's 20 years between my eldest sibling and my youngest sibling. I am smack darn right in the middle. So now I'm really the quintessential middle child, but I exhibit a lot of firstborn child qualities. So as college, psychology is my degree. Sociology is my minor. I love the brain. I'm fascinated by the brain development. I just think it's wonderful. I met my husband in college, my last year of college. So 93, I met my husband. Well, I didn't know it at the time, but I did. I did, and we very quickly connected. He was from Europe, so it was very, exotic to me.
Where in Europe?
He's from the Netherlands. He's
Ooh.
Born and bred in Amsterdam.
Oh, wow.
His mom is from the Czech Republic, so he is half Czech, half Dutch.
Wow.
So we met. We very quickly fell in love. He fell in love outwardly more than I did. I was a very quiet, reserved. I'm a product of divorce. He is a product of a long-term marriage, so I didn't understand how you grow up with 2 parents in a household, right? We had our first daughter in 1995, so very shortly after. So I was 23. He was almost 22 when she was born, so we had her young, and we made a decision. We weren't partiers, we weren't goer-outers. We wanted to be older now and be able to go places with our girls and enjoy them as young adults, and that's where we kind of are. So we've been yesterday we celebrated 31 years together.
Oh, happy anniversary.
Thanks.
31 years.
31 years together.
It's a milestone.
And we'll be married. We are married 27 years in May. So
Wow.
we count yesterday as our together date. So
That's
kinda,
amazing.
yeah. So that's kind of, I think it is my upbringing. It was just a lot of seeing my mom, struggle. My stepdad and I didn't get along, but I understand now as an adult. He was trying to raise all these children, right, that weren't his. My brothers were wild, quintessential American boys. He had his youngest daughter. It was his. He had one child. That was his daughter, biologically full. So you always take second notice to that. But I think my upbringing, definitely, my mom was a strong woman. But in the end, I realized, as I matured, she had mental health issues. My mom was a schizophrenic. I wouldn't know that. It was very late onset.
Oh, no.
And we didn't know it. We didn't know it until things happened when you're an adult. When you're younger, you just, okay, that's mom, right? That's who she is. But the doctor said it was probably earlier than we recognized it. But I was the first one to kind of figure out things were. So, it just, like I said, I think everything that we do growing up shapes who we are as an adult.
Yes.
So I just figured, I saw enough toughness growing up. I just wanted to always be that smile in the room. I just wanted to be that happiness in the room, that peace in the room, that calm in the room, that order, that structure in the room. Whatever that room needed at that moment, I found a way to chameleon my way into and be that person that kind of people looked on to rely on to find that sense of peace. So yeah, I think that's my upbringing.
Let's zoom into trying to understand the first 5 years of kids' life, and what does a school or a daycare do in shaping them?
Well, I've been in childcare for 22 years, right? So when I first got into it, I didn't know nearly as much as what I know now, right? It's an involvement. I heard you say, you always try to learn something, even as an adult. I try to learn something every day. Like, I'm that ambitious. And I think it keeps our brain going that you learn something every day. Children under 5 are unique. Their brain is growing. It's the most growing of their brain, right? As a human being, you do it under the age of 5. So kids do need their physiological needs met. They need to be diapered. They need to be fed. They need to be loved. But kids are learning. Babies are learning from the moment they enter the physical world, right? Even in utero, they know your voice. They know, the mom's voice. They hear sounds. It's been proven, right? There's many studies on that, which again I find utterly fascinating. But when they come into the world, not everybody comes in the same way, right? It's not everybody's, we don't all get a fair shake when we're born, right? That's the plan. Everyone comes into the world clean slate to your podcast,
right?
A clean slate, and it's every experience builds on that child, on that brain, positive, negative. It doesn't matter. Everything that encounters a baby into a toddler, into a preschooler, shapes every part of them. But kids are resilient. That is what parents today need to understand. Kids are so resilient. You see kids in war-torn countries. You see kids in poor situations, in drug situations, in abuse situations. And some of them come out on the other end like...
What's resilient?
Resilient. They can bounce back. Resilient is they are stronger than you give them credit for. So no matter if a child happens to do something, a negative situation hits upon them, or something, maybe they lose a limb, or they're born without a limb, they don't let that impede them. They're resilient. They bounce back. They go forward. And I think that's what I learned most about children under the age of 5, and that's what I try to reassure parents who come to me. You look at a child as an adult with all your adult labels, with all your adult mindset, with all your adult thinkings and all your adult growings and learnings, right? Now I look at a child as a 5-month-old who knows nothing. I look at it as a child who's a 2-year-old who's like, oh my gosh, who are all these people like directly telling me stuff every day? That was my biggest growth mindset, is to turn the table, turn the mirror, and think like a child, observe like a child, wonder like a child over my career. And I think that's what's given me the best insight of what happens under the age of 5. And that's why when I meet adults, parents, staff members, people I have to hire, it is, okay, that's great. That's a great label, anxiety, or that's a great label, bullying. But that's the adult word. Children don't understand that. They understand that something happened to them and they didn't like it. Something happened to them and they did like it. And internally, what's the word I'm looking for? Innately, they want to migrate towards that happiness or that calmness, or they want that experience again. Internally, when they experience something negatively, that's impacted them, and they don't want to experience, most children, most situations, they don't want to experience that again. Now, they may not have control of that, but when they come to us under the age of 5, they don't ask to be put in child care. I tell parents that all the time. I tell staff members that all the time. Children don't ask to be put in child care. They have to, for whatever reason. Parents have to work. There's no, that's the safest place for them. That's the healthiest place for them. They don't ask to be. So it's their job. They have no choice, right? You wake your child up in the morning. You put them in the car. You drop them off. You say, have a nice day. I'll be back. Now this little child, whether they be a 3-month-old baby or a 3-year-old boy or girl, they have to now go to work, essentially. This is their work. So you've put them in a situation that's very different than how I grew up, right? My mom opened the door at 8 o'clock in the morning on a summer day and said, okay, go play, come back when the lights go on, right? the world is very different now. So childcare is really used in a very a necessity. The childcare is. We learned that with the pandemic. But under the age of 5, I think you have to realize that you, I don't know if the word perpetuate is the correct answer, but the correct word, but you perpetuate as an adult your feelings, your thought process on how your child is doing. And I'm going to tell you that's really far from the truth. You may know your child, and you do know your child, but your child doesn't know bullying, doesn't know being left abandoned, doesn't know that, oh, they're not going to love me because they think I'm leaving. No, your child is going to absorb what's going on, and as long as the people around them are positive and encouraging and structured and routine, your child is so resilient. They're going to learn their new world, their new childcare world, and everything they do from that point on is enlightening to them, is a learning process, is a learning moment, it's a teachable moment.
So think like a child is what you are kind of suggesting people do, and I think you very rightly said that we impose what we see them to become instead of trying to really let them be free, let them make mistakes, let them fall, let them get angry, let them cry. They are trying to test us too in this world.
Oh yes,
it's not just one way, it's 2 ways. So the one thing that in the beginning I used to struggle, look how he's doing, look how she's doing, you see, you should be like that, right? This is what I think majority of people think that or say that, right?
I think
do
so.
you do that too, or what do you, can you speak on that a little bit?
Comparing your own children, comparing to your child to another child, is that what you're asking?
Yeah, you consciously or subconsciously do it, like.
I think we all look at everybody else, and again, I see things differently. I see things developmentally. I'm what they call a developmentalist. So even with my own children, sometimes they have to be like, Mom, you're not at work, right? We're at home. Like, so I would be lying if I say I never compared my kids, but I don't compare my kids, because I can tell you that at this age, my first daughter, she walked and talked at 10 months old. But there's a reason my daughter is 5 years older than my second daughter. She was just horrible and not what I thought being a mom was supposed to be, right? So my husband and I had to learn, like, okay, we made this decision very young to do. And then when our second daughter finally came around, it's hard not to compare. It's hard not to, oh, she did this, oh, she did that, oh, she did this. But then you have to step back and you have to be like, but she's doing it on her, she's okay, she did it quicker or she did it slower. So I think it'd be wrong of me to say like we don't ever compare, but I will tell you that I've learned, almost like take twins. I have nephews, they're twins, right? They're fraternal twins, and this one does this. I said stop, they're 2 entirely different people, and it drives me personally buggy when people like, oh well, they're twins. No, they're 2 truly different people, whether they're fraternal or identical. My brothers are fraternal twins. My nephews are fraternal twins. You would never know if you looked at them like they were twins, because they're that different. But they have their different likes and their different wants and their different ways of speaking. And I think when you look at your own children, and you have 2, I have 4, you have 2, you have to appreciate and learn each of your children for who they are. And I know that's easy for me to say now. My girls are young, they're young adults. My youngest is 19, my eldest is 29. But even growing up, and I was like, okay, my eldest is this way. Then my second daughter was, very quiet, very reserved. My first daughter is very much like me, very loud, very dominant, very, my youngest, my third daughter is, a little high strung, a little, demanding. My youngest is a perfect storm of all 3 of my older ones. So, you look at your kids, but it's hard. And when parents come to me in a childcare center and they're like, instinctively, I'm like, after like 2 or 3 months, they'll come to me and be like, they're still on day 1 of their concerns. And I'm like, do you not look around and observe like the classroom that you're dropping off in? If you have privilege to have cameras, do you not learn to look at other children in the classroom And it's not to compare, it's just to make an observation that everybody's different. But there are milestones that people need to meet, or they should be meeting. So yeah, you can use the word compare. I don't necessarily like compare because I think kids are so very different, but I like the words observe. I observe that Zane did this, that, blah, blah, blah. I observe that Shiv did this, that, blah, blah, blah. And I use the word observe because I think compare, for me, compare has a negative connotation for parents in childcare because everyone wants to, well, I want my child to walk. I want my child to write. I want my child to learn the ABCs. But even in my own life, I try not to compare my kids because they are 4 distinct personalities and they all have a common denominator. They do. I see common traits in them, which I'm definitely sure come from me and or my husband. I can see that in our own personalities. But compare, no. When I look in a classroom of 20 kids or 12 toddlers, the last word you would ever get out of my vocabulary was compare. I would never compare them because you look at a child who's 18 months to a room that goes 27 months, there's such a vast learning curve in there. Kids learn so differently. Are they the only child? Are they the firstborn? Are they the youngest? So comparing, no, I try very hard not to compare. As an adult, I even taught my girls growing up, don't compare yourself to others because you don't know their walk of life. You don't know their background. You don't know their expectations by their family, by their culture, by their religion. Don't compare yourself. Are you being the best person you are today? And are you doing your best? If you're not being the best person you are today, then fix yourself. If you're not your best person today, then try harder next time. Don't compare. Be who you are. So that's kind of, so I don't use the word compare.
Yes, thanks for the insight. We say 2 different things and this is so contradicting. We say you should train your kids to do certain things certain way, but then we are imposing our way on them. If you cannot do that, and if let's say you don't put that pressure on the kids, the contradiction is that let them be who they are, let them grow. How do you discipline or how do you teach your kids teachings? There are 2 contradictions. You say don't put pressure on them, and then you expect them to do that.
Yeah.
Parents do that. I do that.
Yeah.
I used to do that. I'm learning, but I still sometimes do that. That's so contradiction. Like you were saying, how do you raise a child then?
So it's very different, right? Like I said, literally, we practically raised ourselves, right? In my generation where I'm 52, I'm going to be 53. So, and I know my mom grew up very differently than I did, right? So I think for me growing up, and even my culture has a huge play in it now, right? I married someone who grew up in Europe, grew up very differently than I did, grew up in a 2-parent household. Oh, excuse me, my apologies. It's a balance. It's really a balance. And when like I just said to you before, and I'll reiterate, I've always looked, I knew I wanted to raise my girls different than I grew up. I didn't grow up in a very, I don't want to say physically loving household. No one was hugging me every day. No one was telling me they loved me every day, right? I have told my girls, even till this day, when they walk out of the house, be safe, I love you. And my girls will say it back, I love you too, Mom. And it's such a moment of surrealism for me that I'm like, my kids tell me that they love me because I never had that growing up. That was something I made sure I put into my parenting advice. But I also brought my girls in, a culture of respect. I never wanted to tell my kids, because I'm the mom, that's why you have to do it. I grew up in that household, right? I'm your mom, you do what I tell you. I didn't want my kids to grow up like that. So I've always explained to my girls why we do stuff. We're not doing that because that's not safe. We're not going there because that puts us in a position that I don't think is safe for you or me. We don't go out after 11, and when the girls were teenagers, you needed to be in the house by 11 o'clock. Boy, they hated me. And I always say, till this day, and you ask any one of them, they'll tell you, nothing good happens after midnight. Because everything you hear on the news, nothing. So you give them the freedom, but you give them the responsibility as well. My husband taught me even further because he grew up in Europe. So the laws, the rules, drinking, drugs, very different in Europe than they are here in America. So when we moved to Europe, we did move to Europe for about 7 years, 8 years. My husband's was a basketball player. So my two older girls had to grow up and got the advantage of, okay, that literally they would leave on a, at 4, 5, 6 years old, they would go out for the day, and they would eat at somebody's house. Somebody would feed them. Maybe it would be your house, and then they would come back at dinner time. Like, where were you? Oh, we were here, we were there. And my husband's like, it's okay. It's okay. Somebody's going to feed them. Someone's going to take care of them. Someone's going to call you if they fell down. And in turn, at one point during the week, or they would make their way to your house, and then you had 4 or 5 mouths to feed for lunch, and and then whoop, out on their way. When we moved back to America, my 2 older girls struggled not being able to go. My kids rode their bike every day on the street. There were other kids on the street. In America, that wasn't so. So my 2 older girls really struggled coming back to America in that way of life. That very restrictive, you can't leave my front yard, you can't go to somebody else's house, you can't eat somebody else's food. Everybody has allergies in America. I've never saw that before, right? And then my 2 younger girls were we came back with my youngest at 1, and then my 4th one was born here as well. So they only grew up knowing a very outwardly restrictive environment, but in our household, it was open. And we brought our girls up in a culture of honesty, transparency. They weren't entitled to anything. I always tell people that if we spoil them, it's because we chose to spoil them. So when we chose to spoil them, we equally can choose not to spoil them. So if we went to a restaurant in the evening and they were crying, and I said, you can stop now, or we leave because we're not disturbing other people. And that was our family culture, right? If we're at the grocery store and you threw a fit, we left the grocery store, and there was no, we're not going to do that. Those were just values we instilled in her, that there was an etiquette, a proper way to fit into society, and that everything wasn't about you. We didn't want our girls to be very me. Somewhere in the parenting of the last 20 years, the pendulum has swung. It is all about your child. Our thinking was, our children came into our world. They needed to adjust to our way of living. Parents probably about 10 years ago decided, we enter our child's world, we have to do what they do. And I look at that as complete backwards. I'm not that parent. I am not that developmentalist. I am not that child care director. I don't enter a child's world. They enter ours. And it's our job as adults to guide them and show them the bigger picture. And again, in my household, everything is what's the bigger picture? What do you hope to get out of this argument with blaming the teacher? What do you hope to get out of, blaming your sister? What's the bigger picture? What are you after? I'm like, well, I said, well, you think this is how it's going to happen? So it's always that critical thinking. I've always pushed on my girls, what are you doing? My eldest was 3 when she pulled up a chair to my stove, and she's like, I will do it. I said, what are you doing? She said, I will make scrambled eggs. She said it to me in Dutch because she spoke fluent Dutch. And I was like, you're 3, you can't. And she's like, I will do it. And I'm like, okay. And I just stood back, and she got her egg, and she cracked it, and she made herself scrambled. My husband's like, what are you? I'm like, she will do it. And if you look at her, she's 29 today, and that's her personality. We just instilled on her parameters, right? If you touch the stove, it's going to burn you. But if you want to do it, do it. If you want to walk the dog, if he's very strong, so if you fall, you might get hurt. My daughter refused to let us teach her to ride her bike because every time we did it, she fell and she got hurt, and it was our fault. So I will do it. She taught herself to ride her bike. She has a scar up her knee, but it didn't hurt her as bad as it hurt her when we pushed her on the bike, right? Because she did it herself. That's what I mean by kids are resilient. Kids can do a lot. I think parents today restrict your kids so much. You don't give them the credit for all that they can do.
We are hindering them more than we think. So
Yes.
Trust your child.
Yes.
Let your child be himself or herself. Don't try to impose your vision for them that you have decided. We forget that they have born with their own destiny. So
Yes.
no matter how hard we fight it, they're gonna meet their destiny.
I believe that, yes.
And in trying to, I wanted Zane to play soccer. I used to love soccer. I still love soccer because of the knee, and I'm trying to get myself into the physical condition again that I can play soccer.
Mhm.
But I kind of wanted Zayn to play soccer. Then I realized that okay, he's not enjoying it. All right, I wanted him to learn karate, just as a discipline, this thing. He was not potty trained at that time, so I couldn't put him in dojo. I quickly realized maybe he doesn't want to do that. So I'm still exploring. I've stopped doing that. I trust him more than anything else. If he decides something, and I was raised like that. My mom and dad, they always imposed my decisions on myself. They let me make my own decisions.
Mm-hmm.
They were there.
Mm-hmm.
They guided me. They gave me reality check, but they never said, okay, I'm going to decide this for you, so you're going to do that.
Right.
So that's why a big part of me is so independent and liberal, and I'm so confident in certain things that I do. Is if I've decided to do something, I'm going to do it, and then if it fails, it fails.
Right.
If I don't do it, I'll not know why I shouldn't have done it.
Right. And you're comfortable in that failure, right?
Absolutely.
Right.
I want my kids to fail because
Yeah.
that's the place or the space where they will grow.
Yes.
Success will not, teach you more as much as failure will teach you.
100%.
And the confidence that you get after you fail and you do it again, you get empowered.
Oh yeah.
You fail again, I'm going to do it again.
Mm-hmm.
Just that not giving up attitude is something that I want to instill. And I think you said like it just. You said the culture plays a big role.
Yes.
Asian kids are very competitive when it comes to like education.
Yes.
They're supremely competitive.
Yes.
I was not as much. I had a part in my life where kind of I got a little bit derailed. Then I kind of pulled my socks back up to get back and into that. But how do you see that? Why is it that like Asian kids are
Well, again, I
very
think
competitive
they
in
are
education?
because of their parents, right? And their parents are because of their parents. Their parents are so in the Asian culture. It is your country. It's the country you're immersed in. So it's what you grow up with. It's what you see. Even in my family, education in the Netherlands, in Belgium, and Germany. Those are the three countries we were in. Is very different than America. Now, I would never have known that if I never moved over to Europe. I will tell you the best thing that ever happened to me personally in my life is living in Europe and seeing a different side of America, seeing from the outside looking in, and being the person who was inside looking out. I'm like, oh my gosh, I never realized, and I'm not taking, America is great. I love it. I love being an American. But I will tell you, America is really behind in a lot of ways. I will tell you that America is so vast and in its own different part of the country. You have your own culture, right?
Yes.
Even in America. So I had to learn in childcare, you have to learn cultures topically very quickly because you have so many families coming in with so many ways of being brought up, so many cultural, religious thought processes, all in. So that, again, who that child is. So as a director, you have to be like, oh, okay, this family is Asian, this family is African American, this family is Hispanic. And in those little microcosms, you have to learn very quickly topical things that are different so that you can meet the needs of that child and not impose yourself on them. You originally asked me, how do you, when children walk in a child care center, they're under 5, those first 5 years. Well, I had to separate. So very early in my career, I would say, at home, you do that. I understand. And that's good. That's what you do at home. But at school, we need to do this. And it wasn't to diminish ever. In fact, it was to empower them. And from a very early on, I thought it was my responsibility first as a teacher, because that's how I started in childcare. And then as a director, to acknowledge that culture plays a huge part of that child that you're talking to. Right? So when my kids went to Europe, when my daughter had to go to school in Germany, when my daughter had to go to school in Belgium, when my daughter had to go to school in Netherlands, that kid had to learn that culture of that country, and that was different from our house, and that was different from the school she was a year earlier. So I've learned firsthand how culture shapes your child. But again, I go back to that word resilient. I also learned how resilient that child is, because my eldest was able to go to school in Germany. She didn't know German. She spoke Dutch. She spoke English. So in her head, I speak 2 languages. I can rule the world, right? And then I put her in, and the German people came to us knocking on our door and said, you have a 3-year-old in your household, they have to go to school. I'm like, yeah, that's great. I'm not German. We're not going to follow your rules. And they're like, no, you don't have a choice. They're 3, they have to go to school. So I was forced to put my 3-year-old Dutch English child in a kindergarten, you know, and I cried every day. I was like, I told my husband, I'm going back to America. This is not what I want. You know, this is not, but boy, am I glad my husband is the rock that he is. He is the worldly person that he is. He's like, you need to just give her a chance. Give her a chance. Not give mom a chance. Give our daughter a chance. 10 days, 3 weeks into her being at school, it was just behind the corner. And when I say in school, it was 2.5 hours a day, right? You know, we were walking home because we walked in Europe. You walk everywhere. You do very little drive.
Walk.
And guck mal mama, un Schmetterling. I was like, okay, whatever. And I stopped and I'm like, did you just speak German to me? And she didn't realize it because to kids, they learn language the way they learn it. They don't translate like adults do. So I had to go home and ask my husband, I'm like, what did she say to me? And he's like, look, mommy, it's a butterfly. And I'm like, where did she learn that? He goes, okay, remember when I said to give her a chance? She filtered into a German school, loved it, thrived, was fluent in German in like weeks. So now she spoke 3 languages. So, and then we moved her back to Holland. And then she went to Dutch school and she thrived and she learned another language because in Holland you learn multiple languages. And then we moved to Belgium and she had to learn another school. And then Belgium is split into French side and Flemish speaking side. So she had to learn the dialect of Dutch, which is Flemish. So, and now she speaks fluent Spanish. So my eldest is worldly and she's smart, but it was culture that played a part of everywhere we went. And I taught her it was respectful and nice to learn the basics in every language. So, you know, at the age of 3, my daughter was taking me to the bakery in Germany and she was ordering.
For you.
For me.
Right.
Because as an adult, it's harder for us to learn language, right?
Yes.
So the culture of that, and these people would look at her because, you know, this is where I felt discriminated against. She spoke German, I didn't, so they didn't want to talk to me. They wanted to speak to the 3-year-old. It was also my 3-year-old that was smart enough to order a cookie every time, and I thought they were just being nice that they were giving her a cookie. No, she was ordering a cookie for herself each time we went to the bakery. So she was pretty smart at 3. So culture, you know, Asian kids, the competitiveness is, and in Holland, you know, school is different. You play until you're like, there's no homework until you're like in the middle school, right? So like when I went there with my American thinking, I'm like, she's going to school, she's telling me she's playing all day, I don't understand this, blah, blah, blah. He's like, I grew up pretty good. We're pretty smart over here, right? So when you ask about Asian, you know, the Asian families and how competitive they are, and they're miles ahead of us academically, you're 100% correct. But I'll go back to me being a developmentalist. If you're strong in one area, you're probably weak in another area.
Yes.
And I believe they're weaker. Not all. This doesn't apply to everybody. Please don't email me.
No, I'm an Asian, and I understand where you're going right now.
Yep, they're weaker someplace else. So they're either going to be weaker in maybe athletics, or they're going to be weaker in social emotional. I will tell you, for me, 7 out of 10 times, if you're stronger academically and intellectually, you're probably weaker social emotionally. So for me, I made a decision a long time ago not to care about academics. This was all through my daughter going to school in Holland, my husband sharing with me the way he grew up. If you set a solid social emotional base, learning comes so naturally. And that, I think, is Americans lost sight of the last 10 years. And I think Asians who are coming to America, who come with this intellectual stronghold of, why aren't they writing their name at the age of 3? Why aren't they learning? I'm like, whoa. Let's just get them to say, it's okay to cry. Can you tell me why you're crying? And then you're like, why do you need to know that? I'm like, I need to know that because that's going to set them up to be a healthy adult.
You need to learn the triggers.
You do, yeah.
The mental health is so much important. If not, it's equally important as the physical health.
Mm-hmm.
And kids do have mental health problems because have you what's your take on that? Kids, when they're such a small brain, they're absorbing everything that they're seeing, if they see constant conflict in the house, if they see constantly, no, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that. uh, what are signs that people should look out for when your kid needs you to, tone down a little bit, talk with them, don't tell them, advise them?
That's tough, Halak, right? Because you're coming from a way, you're educated, right? You want to understand your child, right? This is the sad part of parenting. You don't need a license to parent, right? You don't need permission to have a child. So there are children born into situations through no fault of their own: rape, incest, alcoholism, addicted to drugs, right? We have to turn 18 to vote. We have to be 21 to drink in America. You need 16 in some places to be, a permit to drive, right? We have to be 18 to vote. We have all of these laws that say okay, this is where we've decided you are able to handle this next big milestone, whatever that is, driving, drinking, whatever. But to have a child, and I'm a woman, right? I'm a female. To have a child, as soon as I hit menstruation age, I actually am able to carry a child. Now, should I? Absolutely not. Would I encourage and I was very open with my daughters in my household. When, you cannot be a parent right now, right? So we educated my daughters, and we didn't have these big full-on scary talks, but it was the way we brought our daughters up. Nothing was taboo in my family. If you wanted to talk about something, we talked about it. If you didn't want to talk about something, we gave you that permission not to talk about it. But the door was always open for anyone. And my girls now, if you sit at my dining room table, and I'm sometimes embarrassed to say this out loud, but it's like sometimes it's a night of sailors sitting at my table. The words they use, or the questions they ask, or the way they poke fun at each other. But you know what? I smile at the end of the day because they're so comfortable in who they are. Right. And they're so comfortable to know. They were allowed to cry when they were little, but I had to always encourage them. Why are you crying? I'm not saying you can't. Go ahead and cry. When you're done, let's come and talk. When they're of an age, right? You can't do that to an 8-month-old or a 10-month-old, but you can pick up on cues to an 8-month-old or a 10-month-old. So I think, my brain, I apologize, goes all over when you ask me certain questions because there's so much that encompasses. There's no right or wrong answer there, but I just think open dialogue, and to understand that kids who grow up, in a very tragic household, in a homeless household, in a one-parent household, in an abusive household, are going to grow up differently than your Zane and my children, right? You grow up differently than your son, right? Excuse me again. I grew up differently than my daughters because we took what we liked about our childhood and we brought that forward to our family. Right. And we, as parents, right? That's what at least I think I did. And when I look around, I think other parents do that too. And what you didn't like about your household or your childhood, I think what you tried to change, or at least I would hope you, because you do want to make your child's life better. But I think people forget that kids under the age of 5, their brains that's the most they're going to learn their entire lives. Their brains develop the most under the age of 5. So again, that word resilient. So as much as you can have a child, if you can take 5 kids through 5 areas of America, or 10 kids over 10 areas of the world under the age of 5, and you follow them, they are distinctly going to grow up differently. But the magical part, because they're under the age of 5, there is stuff that they're going to learn, whether they're in Zimbabwe, India, Canada, right, Texas, that are inherently the same, because kids have to grow up and learn. Right. So, and that's why if you put those 10 kids in a room at the age of 3 and you're like, well, they don't speak English, or they don't speak Swahili, or they don't speak Punjabi, like, just give them 5 minutes and watch the magic. They will play, and their troubles in their childhood at that point, their home life at that point, their abuse at that point, their happiness at that point will melt away, and they'll make this microcosm little community. And it's the most beautiful thing for me to ever see as a human being, because that keeps me, and you asked again very early back how positive I am, because the world needs positive, and there is a lot of positive in the world. You just have to open your eyes as an adult and see where it is.
So to me, I see Miss Kerry. I have created this impression. Miss Kerry is well accomplished, very well read, highly educated, fantastic around kids, handles like the large team of teachers, all the teachers, looking at the management of school. And I got an email, Miss Kerry is going to take a part-time off because she's going to go and get more education.
Crazy, right?
Firstly, what are you pursuing? Or what are you pursuing?
So oh my goodness, I'm actually doing a master's in early childhood education after 21 years of being in education. My education got sidetracked because when I graduated college, I was a year older than my husband. So I had to wait for him to finish. But when he finished, we already had a daughter at the time. So when he finished, we went straight to Europe. He played basketball. He got recruited to play overseas. So everything I wanted to do, thought I was doing, in my head, planned out I was going to doing, stopped when I made a decision to go to Europe with him. So we went to Europe with one daughter. And 8 years later, when we came back, 7 years later, we had 3 daughters. And then we had our 4th daughter here. So for most of our marriage, I've been raising children. I've been worrying about their needs, their education, their eating, their learning, their growing, their schooling. And every year I was like, oh, I'm going to go back to school. I just want to, because I'm in the field, and as a woman, when you choose to step out of the professional world, and you choose to raise your family, you're looked down upon, or you're not even looked at all, right? You don't. And let me tell you, raising a family, and I'm sure you watch your wife do it, and raising children today is very different than 20 years ago. I just never had time. Or I didn't have money, right? You want to put your kids through school, sports. You talked about teaching Zane soccer.
Yeah.
We put our kids, we were basketball players, so we were those quintessential, okay, we wanted to set our girls up for success. If you pursue basketball, this is the best way we can help you. You can go to school for free. And every one of my girls could have gone to school for free. And we spent thousands of dollars in traveling and hotels and places to go for them to play basketball. And every one of my girls, when they got to the end of high school, said, thank you, but no thank you. This is not what we want to do. So I was kind of like, I could have put myself through school. I could have saved all this money. So I kind of, at hints of resentment that I didn't listen to my girls earlier on, or I didn't pick up the cues early enough. But long story short, my youngest now graduated 2 years ago, so she's in her 2nd year of college. And essentially she looked at me and was like, who's going to graduate first, me or you? So I was like, oh, challenge accepted. And I made a decision like instantaneously. I was like, I'm going back to school to finish my master's, to do my master's. I never finished. I did the alternate route, so I am eligible to be a teacher, but I chose childcare, so I didn't need to go into teaching. My husband's a teacher. So over the summer, I just decided, you know what, now or never. And I'm impulsive. So you asked about hyper before. I am impulsive. It's got its good points and its bad points. I am impulsive. And I was like, okay, this is what I'm doing. I'm going to go back and I'm going to finish. I'm going to start it, I'm going to finish, I'm going to do it the quickest way. Because in my field, I've been an early childhood director for 20 years, and I will tell you that no one in the early childhood field or the higher-ups, corporate level, right, will acknowledge you if you don't have your master's degree. So as intelligent and thank you as educated as you feel that I am, and I do feel the same, I don't want to say I'm not respected, but professionally speaking, you're not respected until you have those degrees behind you, until you have that master's, the PhD, the doctorate. Nobody wants to talk to you. And I'm like, it's not that hard, because I know people who are graduating today, and no fault of theirs, that are graduating 5 years with their master's in early childhood, and we can sit down and like you and I are having a conversation and they couldn't answer half the stuff that I know.
Right.
And that's not fair, but the world is not fair, right? So I can't blame the world. I have to put the onus on me. I have to accept the accountability, because that's how I was raised, and that's how I raised my girls. So the accountability is on me. If I want to show my quote-unquote education and my educative part of my knowledge of early childhood, so I said I'm going to go and do a master's in early childhood. Eventually, hopefully by the end of this process, that's what I'm working out now, is to have my master's in early childhood with a supervisory certificate, so that I can go and be an administrator in perhaps the universal pre-K program, or in a school system, or at a higher education level, to be a supervisor, like a principal or someone who's got more power to help. Because ultimately, really, what I want to do, Halak, honestly, is to impart the knowledge I have learned over the 20 years to young people who are coming into our field, and we're brought up at a time that kids have all the power, and in early childhood, kids don't have all the power. They need to be guided, and they need to be taught. So I want to impart my wisdom in a field that I am so passionate about onto the new people that are coming in, to give them at least an idea of truly what early childhood is about.
Another commonality I found was that word that you use, impulsive. I'm very impulsive.
Yes.
What you hear parents on daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
What questions annoy you the most?
Annoy me the most?
Yeah, when parents ask you all the time, you're like,
Halak, I want to keep my job in this industry.
you're not going anywhere. I know that you're not going anywhere. Something that I'm trying to find, there should be some flaw in you. So I tell me what, and it's not a flaw, by the way. What annoys you? And you're a person.
It's not what.
You can be honest.
Yeah. I don't know if annoy is the right word, but I'll use your word because it's annoying when parents, right? If I always say, when I'm done in early childhood, if I write a book, I'll probably never be able to work in early childhood again. And I say that respectfully because, again, there's so much culture and pressures that you have in your own culture to raise your child and how everybody should raise their child. And everyone believes that their perspective, their way is correct. My job is not to raise your child. No early childhood educator's job is to raise your child. Our job is to give them guidance and structure and as much about life there is at an age appropriate moment. So what is most annoying? When parents will call and like they're crying. Yes, children cry.
Right.
And they look at me and I can see the contentment on their face, like, so aren't you going to do something? And I'm like, they're crying. The last thing your child wants to happen in their personal space is this stranger to walk over to them and say, oh my gosh, that's the last thing they want. And that's a really hard concept for an adult, a parent, to hear, because you know your child, right? I spoke about earlier about how you know your child and you impart these big words and these labels, and you know what they want and you know what they need. But Halak, you're not gonna be there. You have to go to work, right?
Right.
So guess who now needs to shift the responsibility of knowing what they want, knowing what they need, knowing how to approach them at that moment? It's me or my teachers, right? So, so what's annoying is they're crying. Okay, now you leave because now Miss Kerry says, well, they're gonna cry. I'll go in, I'll check on them, right? Which I always do. I'm very honest and transparent with my parents. Again, something I learned in early childhood a long time ago. Be honest with people, and whether they like you personally or not, they know that they're going to get an honest answer from you. So when you leave and you get in your car and you turn your camera on and you still see Zane crying, which, because we had cameras in our daycare, and a lot of daycares today do have them, and then you call, well, they're crying. And I say, yes, they are. But nobody's helping them. I'm like, define help. No one is scooping them up and being a superhero and saving the day. Yeah. Oh, that's what you want, the parent. Did you ever think about what your child wants or needs at that moment? And so, do I find that most annoying early on in my career, in my younger self? Yes, that's very annoying. As my older, mature, wise, veteran self, I understand your thought process as a parent, but now let me impart my thought process as a director, as a developmentalist. If we dropped you off in the middle of, I don't know, Siberia.
There were pointers that I wrote on my board. I had planned a lot, but it's just how the thing flows. When you were conversing, you don't want to think about that. You want to stay in the present, in the moment. So what I felt I wanted to ask, I asked.
Excellent.
I'm going to open this book after we are done, after you leave, and I'm going to be like, oh shoot, there is like 10 different things that I wrote in here.
I was curious about your chat AI GBT question.
Yeah, so the first one that I asked you, what bugs you the most, was the chat GPT AI
okay,
one.
Okay.
And then the rest of the ones, they were kind of more serious, more. I wanted to keep it fun,
Okay.
and they were more. I thought of it this way, right? If I had to do that chat GPT, I would have just gone for the chat GPT route to conduct the whole podcast.
Right.
I didn't want that to happen. I wanted it to be more organic. I wanted this to be me and you, instead of just again computer driving the whole thing, then I didn't need to do this. I could have just done it with the AI help. I didn't want to do that.
Okay.
I wanted this for me, my growth, our audience grows. They learn a thing or two about you.
I hope so.
I think it was fantastic. Thank you so much again.
You're welcome.
And I really hope, we are able to bring you back.
Of course.
All right.
Thanks
Awesome.
for having me.
Thanks, Miss Kerry. And to this, we are signing off. Thank you for watching the Clean Slate Show Runners. Thank you.
Hey, what are those?
The question is, what are those? What are those people who are just watching the video, not subscribing to the channel, not liking the video, and not even sharing it? Please do all of that. Help your brother out. Get me to 1,000 subscribers. That's my first goal. There are many more videos planned, so I'll see you in the next video. Signing off.